You see, a lot of people don't understand in real estate, whether you're buying a new development or a resale property, a couple of words can change the meaning of the contract, or the way things are worded can change the meaning of the contract.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is KT Confidential, episode 177. I'm Adrian, my good friend and partner, Ariel.
Hi. How are you today?
And I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent.
Good.
We're all in black.
What's that? We are in black.
All in black, yeah.
Yes. This is actually the shirt I'm wearing in my email signature. So in case you're wondering if you've seen me in this before, if I look familiar, perhaps I've emailed you before.
Great to know.
So in today's episode, we are talking about a recent incident that's all over the news about a particular developer in Burlington, or development in Burlington, that recently told the purchasers of the condominiums, I think it was like 5 years later.
Sorry, is your mic actually connected, or?
Yeah, I tested it. Hang on, let me just double check before I continue on. Anyway, so as I do that, the developer, Addy Developments, ADI, I don't know how you say it.
Addy.
But they sold this development. I think it was about 5 years ago when they began selling. And I assume, as with most developments, they sold pretty quick. And then
waterfront.
It looks really nice.
In waterfront condos in Burlington. Beautiful.
Yeah,
I remember when they released it, I was considering one for myself.
Yeah. It comes as no surprise. And here we are now, nearing completion, I imagine.
No.
Well, they are. I mean, they must be somewhat through. The news articles are very vague in terms of information, so I don't know where they're at in the process. So I won't even comment on that. But the story goes, there are multiple purchasers who are now being told that they cannot close unless they pay a much higher price. The articles I've read have attributed that increase to increased construction costs, but they are substantial amounts. As an example, I had one open here. Let's see if I just have it handy. CHCH News. There's a gentleman that purchased in 2015, 7 years ago. Wow. He gave a deposit of $126,000 7 years ago. He paid $508,000 for the property then, and he's now being told it's going to cost him an extra $300,000. What? That's pretty unbelievable.
So we actually discussed this development with a friend of ours who is a real estate lawyer. She's become a friend. She's a real estate lawyer that we've been using for years and trust her quite a bit. And it's not the first time she's seen that.
No, it's not. She wasn't. Yeah. So the big thing, especially with condos, freehold condos are the only type of real estate where you have a cooling off period.
10-day cooling off period for any new condo development in the province of Ontario.
So generally speaking, buyers of these types of properties are having contracts reviewed by lawyers prior to firming up at the end of that 10-day period. And I imagine somewhere in that contract, it was very vague, permitting such increases. Otherwise, they wouldn't be trying to pursue that option. But I suppose, because in the email, it says that there was something like 14 people had made complaints. There's clearly more than 14 condos in the building. So I imagine maybe some people did catch the clause and made a change to it. And these ones that are complaining did not.
I'm just reading one of the other articles, but one thing that I think happened is a lot of the purchasers did not have a lawyer review the contract, maybe because of cost. I'm not sure why you would do that. Or perhaps not the right lawyer reviewing it. So you have
maybe
a friend
the developer just refused to allow that change. And then at that point,
that is a possibility, because you can have your lawyer review it and the lawyer says, okay, here are the changes I recommend.
Right.
And then you take that contract to the developer and you say, okay, I'll firm up on this deal, but here are the changes I want to see. And if they say no, you either move forward or you back out. So, I think the name of the complex was called Nautique, fitting for a waterfront condo. Yes. So if you want a waterfront condo in Burlington, which is prime real estate, like there's not much to be developed waterfront wise in Halton region anymore.
In many cases,
and at the price, yeah. I believe, I think they launched about seven years ago and they were selling for a couple of years. But I think the initial launch started at around $350K. And at that time, that was probably on par for a small 1-bedroom condo. But you look at prices of 1-bedroom condos now, and that would have been a great investment. So people recognize that and they took the risk. And in that risk, creatively, see, a lot of people don't understand in real estate, whether you're buying a new development or a resale property, a couple of words can change the meaning of the contract, or the way things are worded can change the meaning of the contract. So, yeah, as an example, for years and years and years, when you were buying a new construction property, one of the things that lawyers would always say is make sure your levies are capped and cap them at X amount of dollars. Well, now what's happening, and our lawyer confirmed this, is that you can have different segments within that contract. So you'll have one segment that says it's capped, but then other segments within it that are not.
Right. And it's intentionally done in such a way where the first one is probably capped and then the subsequent ones are hopefully overlooked, right?
Yes, as soon as the purchaser, or potentially a lawyer, sees levies capped, if you're not paying attention,
it's really unethical. They should almost have a separate schedule that itemizes all of the potential risks or potential increases that could occur. So if somebody truly knows what they're getting into.
It's extremely risky. So now if you purchased I'm just going to keep it simple, 1-bedroom condo for $350K in this building, and you put $100,000 into it as a down payment, which is probably about right, you're going to get a 6%. They're offering a 6% return of interest on your money. So not that bad. I'd have to do the calculation, but that'll work out to about 37,000 or something like that. Assuming, well, it probably isn't compound interest. So you'll get.
I was going to say that it's very unlikely. Yeah,
you'll get 6%. So $6,000 a year for 5 years. So they'll give you $30,000 on top of the 100, which they probably made.
Would they? I mean, they didn't say 6. They didn't even say 6% annually. They just said 6% interest.
True.
So
that's true.
Maybe they're literally only giving. I mean, that would probably be hard. That you could probably fight that because they've been making interest off of it too.
Yeah, well,
annually,
that's what I was
I
about
would
to say.
imagine.
They're probably making 10% annually in compound interest on private lending or something, right? So,
yeah.
or for their own other developments. Now, there are some of these articles, like the Star has published stuff, CBC, CHCH, lots of articles and news floating around about this. And there are several buyers that are known that will be seeking legal repercussions. So they're going to sue. So I'm curious to see what happens. But it's, this is a good lesson. And I hope people that are considering purchasing new construction, when things are going good and everything goes smoothly, yeah, you generally won't have a problem. But in a case like this, where the developer sees, okay, our construction costs have doubled in this time, the property values,
assuming that's what it is. I mean, we know they have gone up unquestionably.
Sure, in 7 years, it's significantly higher.
Yeah, but also the cost that they're asking somebody to pay is profoundly higher than what one would expect, I think.
Well, if you want the honest truth, I think what's happened, and chime in if you think any differently, but the developer says, okay, we haven't closed on anything. We don't have occupancy on anything. The project's not completed yet. We're running low on funds because we're way above budget. And it's been delayed because of COVID. And in that period of time, in the last 7 years, that $350,000 one-bedroom condo can now be sold for, I don't know, $600,000.
Yeah.
You multiply that out by however many units are in
there's millions of dollars to be made.
Millions. Like, stupid amount of money. Just do quick math. Like, it's a lot. So, imagine being a buyer. And you put
take this one article as an example. This particular person is a retiring firefighter, bought it 7 years ago. That's his retirement.
Yeah. Was banking on it.
He's absolutely.
Does it say whether or not he was moving in, or it was an investment?
It was vague. And I'm sure he wouldn't specify either. But I mean, either way, it's his retirement one way or another, whether he's selling another property and moving in there indefinitely, or it's his retirement from the perspective of he was banking on it being able to fund his retirement.
Sure. And can you imagine, like, we're big advocates of buying and selling in the same market so you don't have to deal with fluctuations.
Yes.
So what I mean by that is, if you purchase a home today, you're doing it likely on the basis that the existing home that you own is worth X amount of dollars. And if that X amount should decrease, then that leaves you extremely vulnerable for funding your new property. The opposite can happen. The X amount of dollars can increase, but it's a gamble. It's a risk, right? And we're seeing that this year with properties fluctuating in value. So can you imagine if somebody like this retired gentleman purchases, let's say he bought a nice 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo facing the water, and that's his dream to move into it. And he signed on the dotted line for whatever, $700,000. And he says, okay, well, my home now is worth $700,000. I'm going to sell it. I'm going to rent. I'm guaranteed that money. And then when that condo closes, I've got the money there ready to go.
Yeah.
So now the guy's renting. His home that he had probably doubled in value in those 7 years. So he's missing out on an extra $700K. And now the developer is telling him to cough up an extra $250K, which he doesn't have. And he just blew another 100 in rent over that period of time.
Yeah.
I'm very confident that there are a few buyers in that building that has happened to.
For sure there has been. Well, we've helped people sell well in advance of their closing because they saw the market was trending positively and they wanted to cash in and reduce their risk. So yeah, you can't imagine the situation that puts some people in. I've never been a huge advocate of new construction, period, condos or freehold. Historically, it's been lucrative. There have been blips in time when it has not. But the premise of it is you are gambling from the perspective of, like you said, you're forecasting that at closing time, the market will be in a better place than it is now. And I'm talking about people buying on speculation, not for primary residences.
Yeah, if you're buying it for your primary residence and you're planning on living there 5 to 10 years, real estate over time certainly will appreciate. So you ride it out, you enjoy the home, and it doesn't really matter.
Unless you are, but even then you are speculating if you own an existing home and you're banking on selling that in order to purchase the other one.
Correct.
There is a higher degree of risk because, like you said, you're not transacting in the same market, and anything could happen. Versus buying a resale property, closing immediately, you still realize if the condo would have appreciated over those years, you still realize the appreciation in the resale home. Plus, if you're doing it as an investment, you're also collecting rent during that time. So you're probably paying down $8,000 to $15,000 of mortgage every year, for an average house. Yeah, principal. You have the tax incentives to utilize over that time as well. And you're still realizing the appreciation. So, and you have peace of mind that you're buying in a market that you know what the conditions are like.
Just want to thank everybody for listening or watching today. Your episode 177 of KT Confidential, the real estate podcast. If you have experienced anything like this or have heard of experiences regarding new construction, new developments, contract issues, anything like that, we'd love to hear your comments. We will discuss it on a future episode, but certainly want to hear your feedback, your comments, if you know somebody that's experienced that. And of course, drop us a like and a subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. That wasn't the outro, but it can be.
I thought that was the outro. I thought you were being like, I'm cutting you off. I mean, there's not a whole lot more to say. I mean, it's, an important topic to discuss. There's been lots of news about it, so I'm sure people have heard about it. But if not, it is a serious thing to consider if investing into real estate, because although historically the market has been great,
can you imagine
moments in time where it's not?
Can you imagine if in the contract it allowed for assignments and some of those contracts were actually assigned to other buyers? I wonder what legal implications will trickle down from that, if any of that did happen.
Well, hopefully they worded the new contracts in such a way that relieves the original buyer of all responsibility. But if not, and the wording was slightly different, then they're in trouble.
So here you have an original buyer that in the original agreement, it says, oh, you can assign this contract at a cost of $2,500 plus admin and lawyer fees. So for $5,000, we'll let you assign it to somebody else. So a couple of years goes by, the development is sold out, and buyer A says, hey, I paid $350 for that 1-bedroom condo. They're selling on the resale market for $550. If I can get $500 and pocket $150,000 just by assigning my contract, that's a good deal to me 2 years later. So buyer A sells it to buyer B. Buyer B pays buyer A the deposit back, plus any gains, pays them that deposit back, plus the $150,000 now in appreciation. And now the builder is saying, now you owe us $250K more to close on it. So who's responsible for that $250K?
Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to the wording of the two contracts.
And
I'm sure the new buyer is fighting it.
If buyer B does want to fulfill that transaction, instead of paying $500,000, is now paying $750,000 for a condo that might be worth only $650,000.
Well, and the resale, the assignment doesn't qualify for the cooling off period. So hopefully they included conditions in their offer that permitted them to get the offer reviewed prior to firming up.
That's right. I don't like assignment sales.
They get messy.
They're
much more commonplace now than they used to be.
They are, just because of supply and demand.
Right.
I
wonder if they eliminated if they didn't permit it, what sort of impact that would have? Would that discourage people from buying on spec and planning to flip? Would it help the market by eliminating some of the investor?
Well, I think there's also a lot of foreign investors in those new developments. And I didn't read the details, but yesterday, so this will now be 5 days old when everybody's listening or watching it, but they announced the foreign buyer tax will be increased from 15 to 20%, and right across Ontario. And so province-wide, if you're a foreign buyer buying property in Ontario, there will be a 20% tax, foreign buyer tax that's applied. So I do see, a lot of foreign buyers that buy on spec.
Yes. I mean, if you look, I haven't checked in the last year or so, but the last time I checked, which was, imagine it was sometime last year, actually, the foreign buyers accounted for something like 5% of the GTA sales, which is not much, versus 20% of the sales being local investors or investors, period. I don't know if that includes the foreign buyers, but there's no question that investors are taking up a big chunk of the inventory.
What those stats don't tell you is that, and I won't, dig into this too much, but on contract, on paper, the investor is local, but the money is not.
Well, who knows? Who knows where it's coming from?
Oh, I've heard many stories.
Well, I'm sure it's still a small amount, because we see it all the time. The vast majority of investors we're working with are just leveraging the equity in their home. And there's a lot of that going on. And that was a proposal that was set out to potentially come into place, where I don't know if they were going to eliminate the ability to use your equity in your home as a down payment, or a portion of it, or it has to be, percentage actual cash, percentage equity. I don't know how they were planning to do it, but that would have a pretty big impact on most people's ability to buy.
So for those of you that are investors, or you're thinking about investing, here is a lesson. A resale property purchased 7 years ago would have had the principal of the mortgage, let's just say a $500,000 property at that time, would have had a mortgage principal paid down of, I'm going to say 15% or so $75,000. So your mortgage went from $500K to $425K, and that $700,000 property is now worth 1.4, probably, give or take.
Yeah.
So now you've got $1 million in profit. Okay, less expenses and capital gain taxes and blah, blah, blah. But you've got somewhere around $600,000 in pure profit on your initial $150,000 investment on a resale property. Should you have purchased resale, got a tenant in there, paid down the mortgage for those 7 years, and now sold it.
Well, and you didn't run the risk of your condo not closing.
Correct.
Right.
And can you imagine now those people that bought condos back then with interest rates going up, like they're going to go up again April 13th. And they're talking about a 0.5% increase this time.
Interesting to hear that.
Yep. So, now all of a sudden the retired firefighter, if he had to take a mortgage on it and was working off of a fixed budget every month,
or maybe he didn't need to take a mortgage out on it based on the original price, and now he does.
Yes. Now I got to mortgage that extra $250K at 5 or 6%.
I would say that's a likely possibility.
Yep.
So now he's got to move to Timmins.
Love to hear your comments. Again, episode 177. We'll wrap this up by thanking you for watching, thanking you for listening. You can listen wherever you listen to your podcast. You can watch by going to ktconfidential.ca, and we'll see you next week.